Good evening, friends, and welcome to another edition of Crime Time with Dutyron and Ed Wallace. We are retired New York City police detectives and 9/11 World Trade Center first responders. If you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, you're in the right spot. Hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you get all things Dutyron and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. Tonight, we got a doozy for you. Bryan Kohberger, the Balaclava Ski Mask purchase at Dick's Sporting Goods. Is this the end? And we ask you that in a poll that's pinned at the chat. Make sure you vote and let your voice be heard. But before we get into it, we got Ed Wallace. He's going to be joining us in a few minutes. He had a little bit of technical difficulties, so he's restarting his computer, but he's going to be with us. We're going to break it all down for you tonight. Special thank you to the replay viewers, the moderators, the super chatters, the Patreon supporters, the Buy Me Cups of Coffee. You guys are great. We appreciate you. We thank you. Here we go.
Learning more about the murders of 4 University of Idaho students in their off-campus house. Prosecutors say accused killer Bryan Kohberger disguised himself in a mask showing only his eyes. As Jim Array reports, that could end up being the smoking gun in the case.
Bryan Kohberger, accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students, purchased a black mask prosecutors say is identical to the one used by the killer. Prosecutors say Coberger bought a mask like this one, known as a balaclava, from a Dick's Sporting Goods in Pittsburgh 10 months before the murders. And look, when you put it on, it covers the entire face, except for the eyes and the eyebrows. Eyewitness Dylan Mortensen says she saw a man in a similar mask in the house the night of the murders.
She sees the killer passing by, a man dressed in black, a black mask up to his nose with bushy eyebrows, as she describes him, about 5'10", athletic, and she's frozen in shock.
Dylan drew this sketch of the mask for investigators, and prosecutors say this selfie of Coberger, taken 6 hours after the murders, shows the bushy eyebrows.
Bryan Kohberger.
Prosecutors also want to introduce into evidence a paper from his criminology course at DeSales University in Pennsylvania. Was it a blueprint for a murder spree? The 12-page essay titled Crime Scene Scenario Final is a how-to for handling a crime scene involving a 35-year-old woman who'd been stabbed to death in her home. The bruises on her face, the marks on her neck should be photographed. Does she have defensive wounds? Are there hesitation marks related to the knife, or are there multiple stab wounds, he wrote. Prosecutors claim the essay shows his detailed knowledge of police procedures and an obsession with murder.
Bryan Kohberger's background in criminology encouraged him, I believe, to try to commit the perfect crime.
Coberger, whose trial is set for August, has pleaded not guilty.
That is a trial that we are all waiting for. August is just 5 short months away, and we're going to get into everything that we heard in this piece tonight. Joining us now live is Ed Wallace, and Ed Wallace is, again, like I said, he had a little bit of problems with his computer, but he just did a restart. So joining us live, Ed Wallace. Everybody, please give a welcome round of applause for Ed Wallace. Whoa. What do you got going on there, Ed?
Well, this is mine, and here's the Kbar knife. So this is what potentially our witness saw, minus the glasses. And if he was wearing a hoodie sweatsuit, black sweatpants and sweatsuit, I believe we're going to be finding out more of the clothing he may have purchased and worn that night. So this is just a hoodie.
Ed, could you get closer to the camera so people can see? Yeah, a little bit closer if you can.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So look, Ed does not have bushy eyebrows, but you can clearly see from this is the exact replica of this balaclava ski mask, right?
Mm-hmm. And this is the Kbar knife with the buckle.
And that's what you're looking at. Again, the murder weapon has not been recovered. As we know, Bryan Kohberger, innocent until proven guilty. But this evidence that we are seeing, Ed, and thank you for that demonstration. I think we were all in the chat taken back when you appeared on the scene, hoodie, masked up with the we're going to talk about the ski mask tonight. This purchase at Dick's Sporting Goods, again, January of 2022. You can argue that Pennsylvania is very cold. It's the Northeast. We're used to that. We live in this area. It's a justifiable purchase, but when you look at the totality of the evidence and you look at the totality of the circumstances, the only witness that is surviving to this perpetrator describes in detail black ski mask, only able to see the bushy eyebrows. I just want to get your thoughts on that before we go into the next piece, Ed.
Yeah, I think it's powerful evidence. It's circumstantial, no doubt. But the drawing of the mask, the bushy eyebrows, 6 hours after in the selfie, it's all there. Okay, the defense is trying to discredit her, but I think that she's got it. She's got the bushy eyebrows. She's got that. We know that he purchased that at Dick's Sporting Goods. We have the evidence of the purchase. Now they're making hay of the knife, right? They're making hay of the knife that, it was an Amazon account that his whole family. So what is he doing? Is he throwing his family under the bus? But now we find out in court documents that the prosecution team is going to ask members of his family to testify.
Right.
So they don't want them in the courtroom until after they testify. So I guess they're going to question them about who had access to the Amazon account and who actually purchased this knife.
And where is it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If it wasn't him and it was his family who purchased the knife, where's the knife?
Yeah.
Okay. Because we got the sheath. Okay. We didn't find the knife in the warrant on his on-campus apartment. We didn't find the knife on the warrant in his house in Pennsylvania. Okay. Right. So where's the knife?
Ed,
and then if he's going to claim that, he purchased this, the sale of it is confirmed that he did it. Where's this?
Yeah. Where is it? And why isn't his defense attorney talking about, well, we have that. Yeah, here it is. We'll bring it.
And then he goes online after the homicides, and he's searching for another knife.
Yeah. Yeah, we went over that last week, and it was interesting. Banfield, a lot of people are fans of hers, a lot aren't, but her and Brian Enton, our good friend Brian Enton, they went over these, the court documents. And again, the documents are a lot. We looked at the two dates. It was 3/26, the recent dump, and then 3/24. And there's just a lot of information in these court documents. And she went over it with Brian in pretty great detail, and again, I know that there's many people who are, cheerleaders for Bryan Kohberger. We choose not to be cheerleaders for the bad guys. We choose for cheerlead for justice. And we want the state to present their case, and the fact finders who are the jurors, they are going to get the evidence. They are going to make their decision. And we look at this with a clear lens and say, hey, if their job, the defense's job, is to create reasonable doubt, and if they successfully create reasonable doubt and the jury believe it, then they'll get that not guilty verdict. But when you look at everything that's piling up, and it is piling up, ladies and gentlemen, we're just trying to be as real as we can with you guys. We know that there's a lot of haters out there. There's a lot of people who are just wanting to find and we see this in a lot of cases, Ed, and we'll go into it later. But, like you look at Wade Wilson, the guy slaughtered 2 innocent women. He's got fans that are writing him in on death row. He was convicted of a double homicide, 2 murders, and he's got fans. And everyone says that, his fan club says, oh, he's innocent. He was,
And Luigi's got fans that are sneaking him love notes in his socks.
Right. Yeah. Ridiculous. Let's take a listen to this piece because they go over some of the docs. Here's News Nation and our good friend Brian Enton with Ashley Banfield.
Yet another metric ton of motions have just been filed or responded to, each one giving us another sneak peek at the main event, which is now less than 5 months away, the trial of Bryan Kohberger. We've been digging through all these documents throughout the day, and among the revelations is evidence tying the defendant, Bryan Kohberger, to the black balaclava mask. It was spotted by a surviving housemate. The prosecutors say they have proof that Bryan Kohberger bought a black balaclava mask, quote, the same type of mask described by Dylan Mortensen, from a Dick's Sporting Goods store in January of 2022. That's about 8 months before the murders. And speaking of Dylan Mortensen, the defense...
Ed, I want to be fair. I want to be fair here, and I want to just make mention of this. The defense is bringing up that that the detectives from Latah County, Moscow PD, when they were interviewing DM and BF, in particular DM, they're saying that she was kind of coaxed into this drawing that we're looking at here. Again, the defense's job is to defend their client and to try to create reasonable doubt. But these are in motions before the trial is starting. And in my opinion, and Ed, you could correct me if you think I'm wrong, I don't think Judge Hepler is going to say, we're going to throw this out. The only surviving witness that drew a statement and submitted it, into the court record, we're going to just throw that out because the defense says it was coaxed. Your thoughts, Ed?
He's not going to toss this sketch out. He's not going to say that her testimony shouldn't come in. It's corroborated. This is all corroboration of what she saw, and now we know he owned that mask. Now we also know that his eyebrows are bushy just 6 hours after the attack. In his dorm, in his shower, he takes that selfie. His eyebrows couldn't be any bushier. Okay, shit. I mean, I call my lawn maintenance guy. They hit him up quick with the weed whacker. All right, those bushes are huge. Okay.
It just amazes me that no matter how much evidence we're seeing, this is 5 months till the trial begins. We're seeing more and more because there was it was a gag order. But now that this stuff is being released and fought with, the defense is trying to obviously get stuff like this, the mask that you wore, that balaclava ski mask, that's damning evidence against their client, and they want it thrown out. I'm not just talking about Ann Taylor, the whole defense team. They want that thrown out.
This right here is the most damning evidence. The DNA right here. Okay. And then you add in the car, you add in the phones, you add in the mask, the purchase of the knife. Okay. It's just a mountain of evidence that's piling up on him. How is he going to dig himself out from under this?
Yeah, and it's unbelievable that his defense attorney stated that he was out stargazing on. We looked at the weather. I looked it up. I'm sure tons of other people looked it up. It was a cloudy night. You couldn't see the stars.
Foggy and cloudy. Foggy and cloudy.
Foggy and cloudy. How do you go out stargazing? And all of this stuff is not just coincidental. It is damning. It's damning evidence. And it's amazing that so many women and men that are out there that are pro Coberger. I would present this to them. If this was your child or your son, your daughter, your adult son, adult daughter, some people don't like calling them children. And in my eyes, at 19, 20, 21, they're still kids. We'll always call them kids. But if it was your family member or a niece, a nephew, I don't think that they would be cheering on for Bryan Kohberger. And it's easy for people who are not connected to it to do that. When we work for the victims and their families as retired law enforcement, as crime scene investigators, as detectives, as I was for 20 some odd years. So we know firsthand the horror that is inflicted on the victims and their families for many, many years, for the rest of their lives. So we're there to work for justice, and there's no, Pullman slash, because people are talking about the Pullman campus police slash Latah County slash Moscow PD collusion, cover up and all of this nonsense. I laugh at that, and
the investigation led to all of these discoveries.
Yeah. Look at this one. I guarantee that he walks. That's one we have to save in the hopper right there.
Okay, yeah, hold on to that one. And just like that's not his car, or he's not guilty. There's no evidence. I see it all in the chat. Okay, just remember what you're saying, folks. Remember what you're saying for after the trial.
A lot of humble pie. There's a lot of humble pie.
Is now attacking her description of it. The prosecutors say they have proof that Bryan Kohberger bought a black balaclava mask, quote, the same type of mask described by Dylan Mortensen, from a Dick's Sporting Goods store in January of 2022. That's about 8 months before the murders. And speaking of Dylan Mortensen, the defense is now attacking her description of a mask-wearing intruder with bushy eyebrows. The state says that is Coberger she's describing. The defense says, well, that witness, that roommate, that surviving roommate, was influenced by the detectives on the case. And they point to the fact that she admits she was drunk that night when she saw a stranger walking past her bedroom door. For what that's worth.
The detectives didn't make her draw that mask.
No. Well, the defense is trying to create that that controversy that she was kind of coaxed into that somehow. I have it written down somewhere. But yeah, it's we'll take a listen to some conversation about that. But Ann Taylor, she's, like you said, she's throwing as much shit as she can up against the wall to see what sticks.
Okay, so the mask was sold to so how many people though? Yeah, but in the infinite world that we live in, okay, and then you look at this community. His car on videotape, his cell phone pinging the towers. He's purchasing this mask, which this witness describes. Okay, he purchased that knife and left a sheath behind with his DNA on the clip. Okay, I mean it's all there. Everything is there. Okay, his work when he was in his master's degree program, his papers that he wrote on committing the perfect crime, and there's a stabbing involved in the crime. Okay, and I mean this may be nothing, but I just find it crazy coincidental that his birthday is November 22nd.
1122 King Road.
Point to the fact that she admits she was drunk that night when she saw a stranger walking past her bedroom door. For what that's worth. In the earlier filings, prosecutors brought up this. Yeah, this is Coberger's purchase of a Kbar knife, which has never been found, and a knife sheath. That one matched the one found near 2 of the victims' bodies, and Coberger's DNA, the state says, is on that knife sheath. But the defense now claims that his Amazon purchase and his browsing history that showed he bought a Kbar knife and bought a knife sharpener and bought a sheath, a Kbar sheath. Well, the defense says that browsing history should be inadmissible because at the time he was living with his family and other users could have been doing the typing, searching, and the buying. They also say the knife and the sheath may have been part of a larger purchase with like camping supplies, including a tire inflator, a backpack, and bear spray. That is some good defense work right there. Because if you bought all those things, camping things, bear spray, tire inflator, backpack, and a Kbar knife in Pennsylvania, that would make sense. But if you can't produce that Kbar knife or the sheath or the sharpener, maybe not so much. Don't forget, he was also known to search, apparently according to the state, for a replacement knife and sheath. As for his medical conditions, we've got
She forgot to mention after the crime happened.
Yes.
answers for that now, too. His lawyers say that his developmental coordination disorder makes it
This is just a joke.
impossible for Coberger to be able to slash 4 people to death in such a short period of time. And the state has an answer for that. That a doctor says Bryan's condition was a thing of the past, something that hasn't affected him for many, many years. And whatever he's got left is like the fine motor skills, little things, not big things. I could go on, believe me, but I'm going to stop here and bring in the best resource I can think of in this story, and that is our own Bryan Enton. Okay, Bryan, let's start with the balaclava. Again, I couldn't believe it. Today, documents showing that they have the receipts. The state has the receipts for the black balaclava from Dick's Sporting Goods. However, if I'm the defense, I'll say this is Idaho. It is freezing in Idaho, and lots of people wear these balaclavas. Oh, and P.S., he bought it in January, in winter in Pennsylvania. I guess that makes sense, but it's really going to have to be add this to the mountain of evidence and see how the jury feels about it.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point that the defense likely will make. There was another just mountain of documents that were released late today that you mentioned that we're still going through. Reading the footnotes, a lot of these new nuggets, these bombshell nuggets are sort of buried in the documents, including this latest about the balaclava, which, by the way, just to be honest, I didn't even know what a balaclava was. At first, I was thinking baklava, like the Greek food, but no, it is a mask. You see it on your screen. That's what it looks like. It's similar to like something that we would wear skiing or that you'd wear on a very, very cold day. And the state got all of the records, got all of the shopping records, has the receipt from Dick's Sporting Goods, and says that Bryan Kohberger bought that on January 10th, 2022, 11 months before the murders. You mentioned it. He was still living in Pennsylvania, and that they plan to bring this in during the trial, Ashley.
So, obviously question number one would be, that's fine if you bought the balaclava in Pennsylvania, or if your family bought the balaclava in Pennsylvania, show it. Where is it? If they have a black balaclava in.
And it's like exactly what you just said. I love that she said that. If you have it, show it. Where is it? Where did said mask go?
In the, things that they seized from his apartment in Washington, that would be one thing, but I never saw one on the manifest. Did you?
No, I do not remember seeing it on the manifest. Granted, a lot of new things continue to come out. It's possible that we just don't have that document because we didn't even know that the balaclava existed or was part of this until today with this latest document dump. I also think this is going to be really interesting, and I'm curious whether this comes up. Since he was living with his family, there's been talk of a shared Amazon account. So how are they going to prove who actually bought the mask? Because you mentioned, if you live in a cold climate, could have been anyone in the family.
Sure. And I'm sure that anyone in the family wants to help his defense more than likely. So just produce the balaclava. And oftentimes, Bryan, detectives can do amazing things by matching certain fabrics with certain lots from that particular purchase. So they've got that purchase. They've got the information on it. Maybe.
Ed, is she barking up the wrong tree? I've heard you talk about this before, Ed.
Oh, no, she's spot on. That's right.
Were you
Okay.
talking at all, Ed? Because you mentioned this about a year and a half ago.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. We can get that specific with that purchase, where it was manufactured, what factory, the date and time, and actually who inspected it and who packaged it, and all that information is associated with that sale. And like for instance, the mine that I wore was made in Canada. It's lot number LO4742. RN103906, and all that information there is contained, and I know where the fabric came from. They'll know where the fabric came from and who stitched it together, everything.
Let me ask you, Ed, would the same apply to the Kbar knife purchase?
Yes.
Bingo. And I'm sure that they are looking at that Kbar knife purchase, and they've looked at it, and they will match up the serial numbers or the lot numbers, the manufacturer date, and it will all come back and match up.
Now, I remember earlier that he had some receipt from Walmart about the purchase of a black sweatsuit, if I remember correctly. I may be mistaken, but I think that's going to come out too. Now, black is the perfect color to mask blood, okay, when you get it on there. And if you got a nice cotton like this pullover here and sweatsuit pants, blood will soak into it. And if you have undergarment underneath it, you're wearing the hoodie, you're wearing the mask, you're wearing gloves, then you go out to your car, and before you get in, you peel all this off and dump it in a bag.
Right. Now, Ed, when you talk about this stuff, like with black concealing blood and so forth, for the new people who have a ton of new subscribers, how do you speak on this, on a professional level? What is it that you did in the New York City Police Department for those that are new and just stumbling across this live stream?
Well, I'm a certified senior crime scene analyst for 15 years. I process crime scenes, investigated crime scenes in New York City. Hold on a second. Yeah. I'll pull it up. I can't remember off the top of my head, and I know I like to be accurate,
I know it's over 2,500 crime
yeah,
scenes.
over close to 2,700 to 3,000 crime scenes.
Wow. Okay. Ed's looking for data. We're going to let the rest of this rip, and then we'll be right back to the questions.
Maybe they could go deep and find out if they do provide a balaclava, if it is the actual one that was purchased. I've seen that happen in trials before. And by the way, those are weird things to have. I never had one in my house until I married somebody who gets cold skiing and skis with one of those.
Hey, I got to stop this because this is a great question. Like, how did Bryan Kohberger know he can get into the house that night? Was it luck, or did he just try many times before he found an open door? We know from Moscow PD body cam footage, and there's going to be body cam footage from that morning from responding officers that we haven't seen. We'll see it at trial probably. It won't be released prior to the trial starting. But we saw many body cam footages of noise complaints at 1122 King Road. One was at nighttime and one was during the day. If you can recall, Kaylee Goncalves came out the back door with a young male. He had remember Ed? He had like zip ties on his wrist, and people were like questioning that.
Mm-hmm.
They came out the back, and we saw that people were able to just go in and out inside the house, especially that nighttime body cam footage. If you guys remember that body cam footage where there was noise complaints and they couldn't find who was the owner occupant or the occupants of the 1122 King Road. And then there was a couple of girls that were that did reside there, but that didn't come forward. And I think Xana Kernodle came out and spoke to the officers. But there were so many kids coming and going, and that was a known party house where people would walk in and walk out.
Mm-hmm. And the security of that house was laxed. Okay, let's be honest, right? And sliding glass doors, in and of themselves, are notoriously unsafe, security-wise. That's why they make all these aftermarket security gadgets to secure the sliding glass doors.
Yeah. Jeremiah Michael says, "Firing squad coming soon to a theater near you."
Yes. And there, there is evidence that he was stalking the house. Okay.
Many times he drove past that house prior.
And he parked allegedly behind the house.
Yes. Somebody put in the chat that he went around and looked at the house or circled the house 23 some odd times.
But they are not every household has one of those. So they're unusual purchases. Speaking of that, go into that a little deeper, Brian, that the fact that the defense will say Bryan Kohberger was living at home in Pennsylvania and they were sharing, Amazon purchases throughout the family. So you don't know who was doing the typing or doing the purchasing. And that would extend to the knife sheath, to the knife sharpener, right? And any other purchases that they find unusual.
Can we pause this for a minute?
And this may be
and put it up on the screen. When you buy a knife like this, it comes with the sheath. The knife doesn't come by itself. All right. I've bought many Kbars. Okay. This is just one of them. And it comes with the sheath. The stone is a different thing. You buy the stone to sharpen the blade. All right. But when you buy these knives, okay, they come extremely sharp right out of the package. Okay. So you would only need the stone if you're truly utilizing the knife for hunting, or in my case, I used it at work. I wore this knife, or one similar to this, on my Alice rig when I was working down at Ground Zero with my survival gear and my rescue ropes and all the other things that I was wearing.
Yeah, we talked about that before we went live. Mr. Henry, I have that video in the queue, so I plan to play that. But yeah, I do remember it. I do remember it with the high-pitched screams. That's the neighbor just 50 some odd feet away from 1122 King Road. All right, so let's let the rest of this play, and then I got a couple more.
One of the reasons we may see Bryan Kohberger's family members, his parents and sister, called as witnesses during the trial. This has been brought up in some of the documents. This may be the reason why. You know, there's been discussions in these documents that I've been going through about, well, if they get called as witnesses, they're not allowed to be in the courtroom before that. They may not be allowed to be in court during the trial because they're going to be witnesses. Why would they be witnesses? This could very well be the reason. The state may want to nail down, call them up under oath. Are you the one who ordered the knife? Are you the one who ordered the mask? And if they say no, process of elimination, they'll, explain to the jury that it was actually Bryan Kohberger.
And
Right.
also, I'll go one further. Mr. Coberger, where's the knife? Mrs. Coberger, where's the knife and the sheath? Sister of Bryan Kohberger, where is the knife sharpener? If any of you lived in the same house and were purchasing off the same computer. I think we're well past those days, though, for many people, where you're sharing a household computer. Most of us have our own accounts and our own computers. But I will give the defense that it's just produce the things that suddenly don't exist, that if a family member bought, I'm sure they would still have, 11 months later. Okay, another question for you, and that is that the defense wants some of the, I think the entire eyewitness testimony thrown out, right, from Dylan Mortensen. There's a couple of things. They say that the witness was drunk. They say it was dark. I've seen lots of cases that happen in the dark.
Ed, okay, she may have made it an admission that they were drinking that night.
Yes.
How is the defense saying in written statements to the court? How do they know definitively that the witness is drunk?
They don't, and that's a stretch in the written materials to the court.
But yet people read it and say, "Oh, she was drunk. Her statements aren't credible." Okay,
she was drunk, but yet her description is spot on. Bushy eyebrows and the mask. He purchased the mask. Okay. All right. Occam's razor, folks. All things being equal, the simplest of explanations tends to be the truth. Okay. She got it right. She got those aspects right. Okay. His DNA is on that clasp, on this sheath. How did that get there? Right. It's a single source male DNA. His. Okay.
Put it there.
Yeah. How did someone plant it there? And how did someone plant the sheath there? Because now if they're going to say somebody planted the sheath there, are they admitting now that he had the knife? Or are they just saying someone had a Kbar sheath and they managed to get his DNA, a single source DNA on that clip?
Let me just, I do not think that someone planted it there. I just said that for the...
Well, the defense is saying it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The defense recently made that statement. And, I just want to put this up here. Where's the blood? I just spoke about how black could absorb the blood. The blood could be on the clothing. But I will tell you, since I teach bloodstain pattern analysis courses, and part of the bloodstain courses, I've showed this on numerous previous videos. If you look up some of our old videos where we create blunt force trauma bloodstain patterns in radial impact spatters, where we take a pig's head and we slice open the skin to the scalp and we place a bloody sponge in there and put the skin back on top. And then I put my students in white Tyvek suits and hoods, mask, goggles, and they get a blunt force instrument like a nightstick or an asp or a crowbar or a hammer, and we make them beat that pig's head to create blood spatter.
We showed this.
There's plenty of times the students don't. Yeah, we showed it. There's plenty of times my students don't have a drop of blood on them.
Yeah.
Okay. But meanwhile, if you look at the projection of the blood on the walls, because we have two walls coming at right angles, and we have the pig's head on top of a concrete block in that corner, you will have blood spatter on the two walls, but not on them.
Right. Right. Yeah. So thank you for answering that, Ed.
And that millions of people have bushy eyebrows, and that her characterization of a witness with bushy eyebrows shouldn't count. This was interesting, though, and I didn't know about this, and maybe you could explain it. They say that the detectives influenced Dylan's memories about the eyebrows and the balaclava. What's that about?
Yeah, and that's what they're saying. And let me just tell you that, because I read all of the filings, many of this back and forth is because the defense wants basically everything thrown out, it feels like, and they are trying everything they can and seeing what sticks. So I wouldn't read into it too much that they're trying to get Dylan's testimony thrown out, but they are saying, and she did several interviews, so it's a little confusing. It's not like she just talked to police one time.
I believe she did she was interviewed 4 times.
But the defense is claiming that it was police who introduced the bushy eyebrows first, and that then she went along with that. We don't know whether that's really true. And in terms of this,
how would the police introduce the bushy eyebrows, Ed, if Coberger wasn't collared until December, I think 30th or 29th?
And remember when the police got Kohlberger's name? The police only got Kohlberger's name when the FBI gave it to them after they got it from the genetic database. Okay.
Right.
All right.
And the car that everybody's getting caught up on, and some people in the chat are saying, oh, they're throwing out the state is throwing out the car and the video evidence and the FBI's identification. No,
that's not true.
It's again, I saw a lot of redundant comments about that, but again, once this trial starts, we're going to see a lot of information that we aren't privy to right now. And at the end of the day, again, I keep going back to it, the totality of all the evidence packaged up to a jury, it's very powerful. And you hear, you hear a lot of criminal defense attorneys that talk about this, and you hear a lot of former prosecutors. Talking heads are on a lot of these different networks, Law and Crime, Court TV, News Nation, and they say, when you look at this, this is a strong case that they have. It's just that there's just so many people that are just so caught up on being cheerleaders for a person who is alleged to have murdered 4 college students.
I've seen people here in New York convicted with far less than what evidence than what they have in this case. Okay, this evidence is overwhelming, albeit the most of it is circumstantial, but enough circumstantial evidence is just as good. Carter, the only problem is unlike Bryan Kohberger, I have a real alibi as to where I was on that day, and it was nowhere near Idaho. Okay, I don't have a white car. So c'est la vie.
Mask, this balaclava, I don't even know if I'm saying it right. That's how I think you say it. They are claiming that they also told her about the mask first, and then she went along with the mask. So that basically she may have been coaxed into saying those things. We haven't been able to listen to the interviews. Again, there were multiple. We haven't been able to see the full transcripts. So we don't really know whether or not that's totally true.
You are saying balaclava, right? You are definitely showing the fact that you're from Florida. The rest of us live with those things from Canada. But it was interesting. We just had up on the screen what looked like a piece of paper with a drawing on it, a very rudimentary drawing. I'm going to ask our control room to put that back up on the screen. This is apparently Dylan's drawing of the mask that she said she saw him wearing. And as rudimentary as it is, it sure looks a heck of a lot like the balaclava that we were showing earlier as well. It looks exactly like that. So I don't know if the detectives coached her to draw that, but if she drew that before they mentioned balaclava, I think the defense has a tough row to hoe there, because that looks a lot like it. You know, even in your terrified state, if you're drawing that, that looks a lot like it. So the other thing, I was so fascinated when the defense brought up all these developmental disorders they say Bryan Kohberger has, OCD, autism, and then this other one, developmental coordination disorder. That's a DCD, developmental coordination disorder. And the defense made great hay about saying, you know, Brian's got this. He can't possibly have the coordination or speed to be able to pull off the kind of murder that happened in that house. I mean, it was all of about 20 minutes or so. And they did the test. The police did the test. They parked. They ran from the car. They went through the house. They mimicked what the murders must have been like. And then they ran from the house and, you know, pretended to get rid of all the bloody clothes and get back in the car, all in the prescribed time frame. And the defense said his condition makes it impossible for him to be able to do that. And then came the state's response to that. Take it away, Brian.
Yeah, and let me just read you this response because I think it's worth just reading word for word. I jotted it down here. This is what the state is saying that the expert that the Coberger team said in relation to all this. To the extent defendant currently has any motor impairment, even according to his own expert, it affects only his fine motor dexterity and vulnerabilities in visual motion functions. The examples she uses for fine motor dexterity include when he had poor handwriting and trouble tying his shoes in the past. So the state is saying, wait a minute. All of a sudden, you have brought in all of this evidence that he's on the autism spectrum, that he's got OCD, that he's got developmental coordination disorder, something we hadn't heard anything.
Yeah, I don't hear his defense saying, thank you, LA, that he was a heroin addict in high school. And
Yeah, Ron,
that's
your mic is a little low.
Oh, okay. I'll turn it up. How's that? A little bit
That's
better?
Better, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, and he was a police cadet, and he was doing all those push-ups and exercises, and he runs. He's an avid runner. Okay, so he jogs. You can't have it both ways.
no, and unfortunately, his fan club wants it both ways, including his defense attorney, who should be part of his fan club, Ann Taylor. They want it both ways, but you can't. It just doesn't work that way. I want to play this piece from Crime Fix. I'm not going to play it all, but Anjanette Levy had a DNA expert come on, and look, I haven't seen her before, but she did talk about the blood, not the blood. She talked about the DNA on the knife sheath, on the clasp, on the button snap, and I think it's important for us to hear it because a lot of people are talking in, Instagram, on social media, on YouTube, that what they have on that button snap is nothing. I mean, there are those people in our chat right now.
It's not trace. It's not trace.
Yeah. So let's take a listen. This is a DNA expert from Crime Scene Crime Lab in Ohio. So let's take a listen to what she has to say.
Not a small amount of DNA, the user of that item. Prosecutors write, Ms. Nolan's use of the phrase touch DNA is not unique, but common within the field. Most tellingly, defendant's own DNA expert plans to use the phrase touch DNA in reference to the DNA on the knife sheath. No blood, hair, or DNA from him was found on any of the crime scene evidence except the touch DNA on the knife sheath. Experts in other cases also use the phrase touch DNA in the same way. And Riley Nolan is ready to testify about the amount of DNA on the sheath. The term trace DNA implies amount. The word trace is defined as a very small amount and is used in the scientific literature when describing evidence samples with low amounts of DNA that do not yield a profile or only a partial profile. I would not be willing to use that term, and it would be inappropriate to apply that term to the DNA on the knife sheath because a trace amount of DNA is not what was detected on item 1.1, and referring to it as trace DNA would be misleading to the trier of fact. So Nolan says this was not a small amount of DNA. Recently, I spoke to DNA expert Kristen Slaper about that amount of DNA taken from the sheath.
So 0.168 ng per UL.
Ed, could you explain to the audience what those numbers were that she's referring to?
0.16 nanograms.
Okay, so 0.16 nanograms, and
right.
She goes on to
which is above what's needed to get a profile.
Tell me, how much DNA is that? Is that a lot of DNA? Is that a little bit of DNA?
Yeah. So in my opinion, that's a lot of DNA. That's 0.168 nanograms per microliter. And at least in my lab,
So I like to listen to experts in the field. Like when people ask me about cell phone data and tracing, we get a cell phone data expert. When they ask us, Ed, to go to computer forensics, we got the NYPD computer crimes guy. We had the CO, the former CO of computer crimes, Dennis Lane. But we also had former computer crimes detective on with us.
Right. Vehicle experts, hair, anthropologists, entomologists. We had them all. Odontologists.
Yeah, I spoke to DNA expert Kristen Slaper about that amount of DNA taken from the sheath.
And I say this to our audience with with the utmost respect. If you're going to listen to someone tell you something or talk to you about something, if they have no expertise in that particular area, then take it with a grain of salt. I look to you, Ed, for clarity as it pertains to crime scene and evidence collection and DNA. And we always yield to the experts.
So 0.168 ng per UL. Tell me, how much DNA is that? Is that a lot of DNA? Is that a little bit of DNA?
Yeah. So in my opinion, that's a lot of DNA. That's 0.168 nanograms per microliter. And at least in my lab, we would target, 1 nanogram of DNA. So you would need 1 microliter, which is a very tiny amount. If you took all of that sample and you put it into the system, it would be way too much for the system to handle to produce a DNA profile. The amount of DNA, the target that you have for your system is all based on lab validation. So this lab would have had a validation that said this is the ideal amount to get a single source profile or whatever. But you can get a DNA profile with far less DNA than what is there. So I think it's a decent amount of DNA. Can you say where it came from? No. I think the other thing that's important is it's single source. So when you start to talk about transfer, and I think even in one of the documents, they have a diagram of the different types of transfer, whether it's primary transfer, secondary. When you're talking about a single source profile that has been transferred onto an item, it seems like it stands to reason that it is from the direct application of that DNA onto that item. Now, if you're talking about touch DNA, people shed DNA in various rates. And that's one of the biggest arguments that you'll find is that there's no way of knowing if I touch something one time and then you swab it, will you get my profile off of it? Versus if you swab the same item, you may shed more DNA or more skin cells onto an item than I do. So there's no way of knowing, but ultimately it's from one person, which means if someone else transferred Bryan Kohberger's DNA onto this item, they had to have something from Bryan Kohberger and put it on the item without also mixing themselves into there. So the biggest case that, probably in the history where planting evidence was known is the O.J. Simpson trial or the O.J. Simpson case. And if you recall the evidence in that case, there was a lot of it. But they had a vial of O.J. Simpson's blood that they had collected from him. Take his blood.
Okay, what do you got, Ed?
Is she saying that LAPD planted OJ's blood? Is she saying that was the allegation that the defense team made? That has never been proven.
Correct. This is my first time listening to it all the way through, but what she talked about with Bryan Kohberger, I wanted the audience to hear it. And I wanted, I wanted to get her opinion on it. Yeah, I don't agree with that. I didn't even realize that she went on to talk about O.J. Simpson.
I know during the trial, they made a big thing because the detective mishandled a vial of blood that was taken from OJ at the hospital, and he didn't voucher it correctly. He put it in his car. He took it home, all that. Okay. And they made a big thing about EDTA. EDTA is an anticoagulant preservative that is in the particular vial vacutainer of the blood sample they took so that the blood wouldn't clot. Okay. But EDTA is found in salad dressings and on food we eat. But when they searched the blood stains for EDTA, it wasn't in the quantities that would have been from the vial.
Yeah. And I bet you Anjanette Levy didn't realize or didn't know that she was going to go into that. I mean, there was no reason for her to even mention that case. But let's listen to the rest of this because I fast forwarded it a little bit.
House is having bushy eyebrows. Well, Coberger's attorneys, they're not happy about that selfie. Alicia Massive writes, the photo of Mr. Coberger that the state attached to its response is not relevant and is overly prejudicial. This is akin to the state trying to identify Mr. Coberger for DM or create its own corroboration for her. DM previously said that she could not identify him. there are literally millions of people in the world who might be described as having bushy eyebrows. The term itself is subjective, and DM has a fascination with drawing eyes and eyebrows. Massive goes on to write that a detective was the first to ask DM about the color of the man's eyebrows on the day of the murders. And then DM didn't bring up the bushy eyebrows until November 17th in another interview with police.
Coberger wasn't arrested until December 29th or December 30th, right, Ed?
That's correct.
So how would the detectives be leading her into bushy eyebrows, which coincidentally Bryan Kohberger has? It's just...
And look at this. Massive included this sketch from DM. Detectives asked her to draw the type of mask that she saw that man wearing. I flipped it around so you could see it from top to bottom. Prosecutors are now revealing that Coberger bought a black balaclava from Dick's Sporting Goods in January 2022, and that it's similar to the mask that DM sketched. Now, Coberger's lawyers are pushing back against the bushy eyebrows description. They say allowing it would basically be pointing the finger right at Coberger. Meanwhile, prosecutors have included a photo of
There it is, Ed.
11/22. That's his birthday, November 22nd.
Some people arguing that the Pennsylvania doesn't have the driver's license expire on the person's date of birth, but we know that
that's not true.
It's not the case.
Hold on.
Coberger's driver's license.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
Since from Washington State, the photo was taken 4 months before the murders. Coberger's lawyers are also responding to prosecutors saying their motion to strike the death penalty should be denied because Coberger has autism spectrum disorder. The defense writes, Mr. Coberger's ASD, he made small talk with the detective in the back of the car during the ride to the police station. He asked the officer about his education and suggested that they get coffee at a later date. He did not perceive the profoundly serious nature of the moment and exhibited no perception of what was happening.
Please.
All right, so
this is a good interview because she goes on to talk here with former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney Josh. And you know what? I really like what he had to say here, and I'm gonna let this play. I'm not gonna let all of it play, but just take a listen to what he has to say about the case.
Oh, there is a lot to talk about here. We haven't even gotten to all of it yet, but we are going to do that with Josh Ritter. He is a former prosecutor, currently a defense attorney in Los Angeles. So, Josh, I have to get your thoughts on possibly hearing from members of Bryan Kohberger's family. The state says they may very well call members of his family to testify against him. Your thoughts on that? Because we heard a lot about him possibly acting very strangely when he was home for the holidays. And obviously we know his dad drove cross country with him from Washington to PA.
Yeah, it's wild stuff. I mean, you just usually do not see this. Though it's not, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just kind of usually the defendant's family is off bounds for the prosecution. But in this case, it kind of makes sense if you think about it. For one, the reasons you point out, it's probably important for jurors to understand what he was doing when he was back at home in Pennsylvania. Does that include things like cleaning up his vehicle? Does that include things like discarding items in the home? Does that include things like being very meticulous as to what was being put into the garbage? This is all circumstantial evidence of somebody who might be covering up a crime. They also might be calling them to just kind of create a timeline. Where was he? When did you last speak with him? Where can we put him? Is he still someone that we can put at the murder scene? What was the discussion as to why he was then going to travel back home within weeks of the murders? But the other thing, too, is the new revelation that we've had about the Amazon account. And
right.
It may be that this was a shared family account. And so they may need someone to lay the foundation as to who had access to that account, who was making purchases on that account, and what purchases, and we know one in particular that is very interesting, who made those purchases and when.
Yeah, and they said they have a witness or witnesses that have knowledge of Bryan Kohberger having a Kbar knife. And so that's making me think, I mean, that could be any number of people, But that makes me think, is that a family member who either logged into the account after they thought he was acting weird in Pennsylvania and they're like trying to put the pieces together? Or did they see him with this thing and they're like, why do you have this thing? You're like a PhD student. You're not a knife guy.
I got news for you. Nobody in his house saw that he had that. Like, there's people saying out there, I saw a couple of people surmise that the father knew about it. The father, him and his father passed it around to each other, and that's what they do in Pennsylvania. That they're hunters and this and that and the other. He's not a hunter, and that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to say that the dad bought it and he took it from the dad, or the dad bought it and someone took it from him and mysteriously planted that knife sheath underneath the body of one of our victims.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I was thinking as well. Is it could be one and the same. The family members are also the people who are going to testify as to him purchasing and actually being in possession of that knife. It could be that the knife was delivered to one of the family members' homes with his name on it. I mean, there's any number of things that could establish him being the one in possession of that knife. It could also include classmates, friends, acquaintances who may have ever seen him in possession of a knife like that. I will say this, that is a remarkable type of knife. And what I mean is that's not a knife you commonly see in someone's home. I feel like it would be the type of knife that you would remember someone being in possession of. It's not, a kitchen knife or some sort of typical kind of pocket knife.
Ed, could you show that knife again? Do you have it handy?
Yep.
I'll put you on once you got it. Just put it horizontal, vertical. Yeah. Look at that thing. Lower it just a little bit. Lower it down. Yeah. And that's a huge knife. Yeah. The size of his head. I mean, that go from the chin all the way up through into your brain. It's a wicked knife, and Josh isn't far off with his description.
That some people carry. That's a knife that I feel like people are going to remember seeing in someone's possession.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to your point, Josh, look at this thing. I mean, this sheath is as big as my head. I mean, somebody remarked to me the other day about this, like when I got this thing. I mean, look at it. It's huge. And it says Kbar USMC. I don't have the knife in here, but like the knife, I mean, think about it. This is a big knife.
No, it is. And you look at it and you immediately wonder, what in the world does somebody need a knife like that for? Like I said,
it's a combat knife.
It doesn't appear to be kind of a common pocket utility knife that somebody might carry around. I used to carry around one of those Swiss Army knives. This is a large knife that is not going to easily fit into a pocket. That sheath itself is meant to be tied to a belt. I mean, it's just the kind of knife that, like I said, is going to draw attention and likely have people remembering when they last saw it.
Now, there are other purchases that the prosecution, they've got records, all these records they just want to introduce. I mean, they're talking about purchases that Bryan Kohberger made at Dick's in June of 2022 and also Under Armour. And I'm thinking to myself,
right.
They say that he was in the house. There's this guy in all black wearing a mask, wearing black boots, all black. You're not going to introduce these purchases unless you think that they were involved in the crime. You have to think that they think he bought something at Dick's and Under Armour that he wore to the crime scene.
I think you're absolutely right. We're obviously doing a little bit of a guessing game here, but I think you're absolutely right that I was immediately thinking something like gloves, clothing, like you said, boots could be part of it. It could also be tools. If there's something that is a tool that might be a pry bar or something that could be used to gain access to somebody's home, anything that would look like, what we would consider like a residential burglary kit might be items that they are most interested in, especially if these are purchased close in time before the murders took place. You're purchasing gloves 2 years ago, maybe not as important and not as perhaps not even admissible in court, but you're purchasing.
Ed, let's talk about his 2020 homework. They called it Crime Scene Scenario from DeSales, Dr. Catherine Ramsland. This is, again, in 2020. This crime was committed, in 2022, late in the year, November 13th. It goes on to talk about PPE, how to, get in and get out undetected.
Stabbing a woman too.
Yeah. So there's a lot. I mean, I have it saved, but I don't want to bore everybody with continued pieces of media. But listen, let's talk about this. Hashtag Ed, hashtag Dutyron. Put your questions in the chat as it pertains to this crime scene, the evidence. And Ed, you and I think we have over 100 videos on this quadruple murder at 1122 King Road. And I have to bring up the victims and their families are what's most important. Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and her boyfriend, Ethan Chapin. That's who we have to put at the forefront when you talk about a case like this. And a lot of people forget about that. And they forget about there are real life people who are whose lives are now changed. But Ed, that homework assignment, as they say, with in 2020 with the in DeSales University, I mean, that you can't discount that here. And that's going to come up during his trial, that he was studying. And he sent out that questionnaire. I have it saved, but I just don't want to play it because it's really long. But Banfield went over that questionnaire and all the crazy questions. Remember, he sent it out to people on a social media type app where he was asking for people to give their thoughts on various crimes and so
Monkey
forth.
survey, yeah.
Any thoughts on that, Ed?
Well, he was doing research for allegedly a school project. Yeah. So I just don't excuse the cough. I was eating some pistachio nuts, and I got some of the crumbs still in my mouth, and it sometimes just drops thing. But before, when we were talking about the Pennsylvania license, you may have some new people here, but many people may not know that for one of the courses that I teach for Homeland Security is fraudulent documents. Okay. Right. And, we give out ID guidebooks to all our students that list all the national and international driver's licenses and IDs and passports and so forth. So the standard practice with the American driver's license based upon the 9/11 Commission has to have certain security features and things like that. But pretty much all state licenses expiration date is the month and the day of the driver's license holdee's birthday. Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to go to the pinned voting. There's 1,084 votes. And we asked this earlier on to you guys. Is the new evidence of Bryan Kohberger's purchases the final nail in the coffin? Is the ship sinking for the defense? And 81% of those 1,086 votes, you could still vote if you haven't voted yet, 1,086, 1,087 votes. And we asked, the answers were yes. It's damning, 81%, a resounding 81% said yes. 8% said no, still not enough, and 11% said not sure. So the votes are swelling now to over 1,000, 1,100. Let's play this. This is about his studies at DeSales University, and I think Dr. Catherine Ramsland as well. Let's listen in. This is old.
To the Idaho student murders case and potential new evidence against the suspect, his homework. Kana Whitworth joins us with the details. Good morning, Kana.
Yeah, Rebecca, good morning to you. So that new evidence is helping prosecutors hone in on the former PhD student's classwork, specifically his crime scene scenario final. But Bryan Kohberger's lawyers say that early in his education, he was treated as a child with special needs. But now, with just a few months until trial, it's all under the microscope.
This morning, prosecutors in the Idaho College murders case saying Bryan Kohberger's homework could play a crucial role in the trial. In a new filing, prosecutors say the alleged killer turned in what amounts to be a crime scene how-to guide as part of a homework assignment in 2020. Some of the details.
I wonder what he scored on that, Ed.
Yeah. His professor was the woman that co-wrote the book with BTK.
Yeah, she co-authored that book. I don't know the title of it, but yeah, very famous. She did an interview, but she refused to comment any further. And I have her interview, but I have a feeling she's going to get subpoenaed to testify at this trial. I could be wrong. Let me know what you think. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comment section. An astounding 1,125 people voted. Still 81% said yes, it's damning evidence and the ship is sinking. 7%, it's now gone down to 7% say no, still not enough. And 11% are still holding on that they're not too sure.
Mirroring the new filing, prosecutors say the alleged killer turned in what amounts to be a crime scene how-to guide as part of a homework assignment in 2020. Some of the details mirroring the Idaho College murder scene.
Prosecution is trying to make the argument that this information plays somewhat of a playbook for not leaving evidence behind a crime scene.
The 12-page crime scene scenario final from his time at DeSales University, detailing how an investigating officer would process a scene where a deceased white female had been found, including the use of protective clothing to avoid contaminating the scene or leaving fingerprints. Well,
I want to put that back up. And again, you look at this. I mean, includes the use of protective clothing to avoid contaminating the scene. And we have very little contamination in that scene. I asked you countless times about that. And many of our true crime enthusiasts have continually say, well, why is there no blood? Why is there none of his blood? We talked about the slippage on, thrusting a knife into a human being, how blood is slippery, how he got away with not leaving anything at that scene. Ed, I'm going to put you back on.
Okay, so you see this is the hilt right here. So this stops your hand from sliding forward and cutting it on the blade. So if you were to stab somebody and the tip hits bone, the knife's forward momentum will be stopped by the bone in most cases. And if you didn't have this hilt here, your hand would slip forward because an object in motion wants to remain in motion, and it would normally go forward. So if you just took a kitchen knife that didn't have this, a lot of times we get the suspects cut themselves in that manner and leave their blood at the scene.
Can you show that hilt up close to the camera so people could see that? Because it's hot. Yeah, there you go. Now you could really see it. I mean, it's almost, it almost gives you leverage when you're using it, and that's what makes it a brutal weapon. Carrie, thank you for being here. Our good friend from Florida, thank you for joining. How interesting. Bryan Kohberger's mom was a special needs teacher. I mean, I find it interesting, but it's not going to help, obviously, his case. And I know you weren't, but you didn't send that. And thank you for the super chat, by the way. I don't see it helping the case, but it is coincidental, I guess. Paul, thank you for the super chat. And yes, great to catch you live. So happy for your diagnosis. Hope the Saint Peregrine may have helped. He sent that to me. And thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. Let's listen to the rest of this, because I found this fascinating, even though it's old information. We knew about this a while ago, but the crime scene scenario final, I mean,
had been found, including the use of protective clothing to avoid contaminating the scene or leaving fingerprints. While Coberger's lawyers say he is innocent and argue he has a developmental disability that prevents him from having the speed and coordination to carry out the murders, prosecutors point to purchases he made, including a balaclava, a type of ski mask that covers the head but not the eyes. They say he bought it in January of 2022. Prosecutors sharing this never-before-seen image drawn by the surviving roommate in the days after the murders, showing what they say appears to be that kind of mask. She told authorities the man behind the mask that she saw in the house that night had bushy eyebrows. And another purchase in the spotlight, a Kbar knife and sheath bought on the Amazon account Coberger used, similar to the knife and sheath seen in this image from the...
Let's stop it for a second. Angela S., good to see you. Dakota says, while all of this is interesting, I hate to see trial by public, undermining sitting an unbiased jury. This case has been talked about nightly on YouTube, on all of the major news networks, Court TV, Law and Crime, News Nation, and many, many local affiliates. They're not going to have a problem sitting an unbiased jury. If they weren't able to sit an unbiased jury, they would not have the trial proceed forward. Talking about this is what's out there. This is public information that's being released by the court. Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not talking about information that is under the gag order, under
seal. No, this is what they're releasing.
They're releasing this. This
and
is being.
They moved the venue.
Yeah, they moved it up into, where Lori Shallow Vallow over in Ada County. So it's some 300 miles away from Latah County. So I do not see any validity to that comment.
The Amazon website, but the defense arguing that anyone from the suspect's family could have made the purchase from that Amazon account.
Well, prosecutors also say they can provide testimony from witnesses with knowledge that Coberger is the one who purchased the knife. The murder weapon has never been found.
I wonder who they're alluding to, and it would just be speculation, Ed, on our parts. But, could it be a friend that he shared this information with, that he talked about in Pennsylvania or wherever he was when he purchased the said knife?
Well, he could have had somebody over his apartment in the campus.
Where'd you get that thing? Hey, guy, where'd you get that thing? Yeah. Oh, man, I got it on Amazon. Yeah. You want a link?
Or somebody, if he had the one that had the Marine emblem on it, which is what is alleged here, somebody might have seen it and said, oh, you were a Marine, or where did you get that? Right.
Right. Look, I'm going to show you. I put this up the other day. But here on the horse, thank you so much for the super chat. Did KB have IDs from some of the victims in his possession? So did Bryan Kohberger have some IDs of the victims in his possession? Some people talk about that on the internet, but we didn't hear anything, see anything in court filings definitively pointing to that. But it was reported that it was out there, but I don't know for sure. But look, you can go right on to Amazon. I just put in the search bar Kbar knife and sheath, and look at what comes up. I mean, there's even a descriptive video about this item, and if I wanted to buy it right now, I would just click buy. And look, here's a video where it's showing it, a minute and 8 seconds for you to look at. So this is available right now on Amazon for 22% off, $95.30, and I could have it shipped right here to me in free delivery by Tuesday, April 1st. How about that, Ed? Interesting. All right, let's take some questions, and let's thank everyone for their super chats, and to the people who respectfully disagree with us. We love you guys. We look at and we respect everybody's position as it pertains to the guilt or innocence of Bryan Kohberger. But as I always say, and I'll continue to say this, it doesn't matter what I think or what Ed thinks or what you think. It matters what the jury that's seated for this trial thinks after hearing the state present their evidence, and the defense is defense. So that's all that matters. All of this is just banter. We're talking, but we are not just giving you banter. We're giving you our professional opinion, because we've been in this business for collectively retired and active 30 some odd years. So we know about this stuff. We've been in courtrooms. Ed has testified. I have testified at trials. I just don't like when you hear people talking about it with no experience whatsoever as it pertains to anything in the criminal justice system, because then it just it muddies the water. Angela, what has she got? Our good friend Angela
Ed,
S.
what are the chances of someone having heard of the case and gets picked for jury duty and says they have not hear of this case and they really have? Well, they're committing a felony then.
Yeah,
okay, if they get found out, there could be jury nullification, there could be mistrial, and this individual could be arrested and charged.
Bingo. Yahtzee. Don't pass go. Paul K is in the chat. He says #Ron. So he carried, probably running with an unsheathed large knife. He could have had it in his waistband. He could have had it in his pocket. He could have just had it in his hand and just went like this and then just
had a bag.
Yeah, right? It could have been a bag.
She claims she also saw what she thought might have been a small vacuum. Well, what if it wasn't a small vacuum, but just like a gym bag or something?
Yeah. Listen, here's Cindy Holenbeck. She's from Pullman, Washington. She, worked at Washington State University, was on that campus where Bryan Kohberger was. She says, believe it or not, there are people in Moscow and Pullman who have not heard of this case. I mean, I would find that hard to believe, but coming from Cindy, who we know, she's got no reason to bullshit about that. And she is telling the truth. I'm sure that there's some people who don't even read the paper or look at the newspaper or look at the news. I mean, so look, my son in Florida, when I went to go visit him, he doesn't even have TV. I said, why didn't you have TV, cable TV or anything? Because it's just a bunch of horror. I don't want to see it, Dad. So him and his girlfriend don't even they don't know what's going on around them, period. So anything that they get would be coming from people talking about it. So let's take a couple of more because we're an hour and 16 minutes. I want to wrap this up. Princess Mitch, good to see you. I saw Rob was in the chat. Guilty of crime. Jay is here. Good to see you. I can't wait until the trial is over. I can't wait till the trial starts. I can't wait to hear the opening. I can't wait to see and hear the evidence, the body cam footage of these responding officers. And some of you guys would say, "Oh, this is really hard to say," but I want to see and hear, not see personally myself, but I want to hear about this crime scene. I want to hear about what was done to these victims. Like, you're going to hear there's not going to be any holes barred. There's going to be very gruesome details about what happened. And I think it's important to know, and for the people that are cheerleading for Bryan Kohberger, when you hear about the brutal, gruesome nature of this crime, and you see and hear the evidence that they have that it's not been released to the public, that only Ann Taylor knows, that's the defense, and the prosecution knows about, when we get to hear all of that, there's going to be a lot of humble pie, and there's going to be a lot of people that have some, real soul searching to do. So think about it. Ed, what do you got? What do you got, brother?
Tennessee, do you suspect BK drove back to the scene the next morning to possibly retrieve the missing sheath, or did his curiosity just get the better of him and he wanted to see what was happening?
Oh.
I believe excuse me. I believe he might have been listening for this on the news and he didn't hear anything. And so he said, what the hell's going on? And it's not being reported. And he went back there to take a look.
Mm-hmm.
Because I teach my crime scene investigators, especially on the outdoor crime scenes, to always take pictures of the crowd that, assembles on the outdoor crime scenes, because a lot of times the perpetrators do return to the scene of the crime.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. KD23 says, Dutyron, what other evidence do you think they have that they haven't told us yet? Any possible clear videos, ring cams that we haven't seen, you think? It could be anything, but I'm going to tell you this. There is a lot more that is not publicly out there that we will hear about. There is going to be some ooh and ah moments, and it happens in every trial. For those of you who are, that follow trials, just think back to some of these trials, like even Sarah Boone. There's so many moments things that happen, like when we covered the boys from California, Orrin and Orson West and Syrian Classic. we were shocked to hear about them one of them being put in a cooler and discarded into a dumpster. We didn't know about that for a whole 2.5 years. We didn't hear anything about that until the trial happened. When the trial was ongoing, we got to hear Frizzell and Jacqueline West, the adoptive parents, the gruesome things, the nasty things, how they made one of the little boys fight and punch and watch the death of one of these toddlers. So there's so much. And I would have to just speculate. You would just be asking me, what do I think? I don't know. But when this thing kicks off in 5 months, we're going to be there, Ed. You and I are going to cover it day to day. And there's going to be a lot of people eating humble pie. And you could mark my words at that. You could hate me all you want. I don't care. But I am not. And Ed, I know you stand shoulder to shoulder with me. We are not cheerleaders for murderers. We realize that you're afforded the innocent until proven guilty under the law. But when you see what we see and the evidence that we're looking at and all the things that we're looking at as professionals, we can't get on your side of that cheerleading. You could choose to do it, but I'm not doing it. I will never do it. This is not, this isn't the place for you if that's what you're into. What do you got, Ed?
Ocean Girl 505. Ron, Ed, BK will enjoy reliving this in court. I'm a retired therapist and I have worked with 2 murderers. Horrific. And that selfie is all about this. Okay. That selfie that he took was, in my opinion, a souvenir for himself and the pride of what he did.
Agreed. You see more, Ed? I want to just take an opportunity quickly to say thank you to everybody who sent kind words to myself and my wife on the loss of our beloved pet, our part of our family, Oscar, our 17-year-old dachshund. We brought him home today from the crematory. His remains are here in the house. My wife, so emotional today. We picked him up early this morning, and I want to just thank everybody for the love and support. Ed was calling today, checking in on me, texting me. I appreciate that, Ed, so much. So yeah, Aaliyah says there's a lot of people who aren't online or watch the news. I agree 100%. Do you think the trial will be televised? I hope so. But look, we didn't get to see Lori Shalavallo's trial televised, right? And this is the same court, same courthouse, but not the same judge. The judge makes the decision, right, Ed?
Yes.
So it's going to be up to Judge Hippler, and he seems pretty open to it. So I'm hoping that it will be televised and that there'll be one pool camera, hopefully Court TV or one of those, good guys in there. So what do you got?
Mary writes, and this has been reported in the news. I've seen it. Bryan Kohberger's sister told her parents she believed Bryan was the Moscow Idaho killer, rather. And he was wearing plastic gloves in the house in December.
Yeah. Well, we know from the arrests and the surveillance from the FBI that they were able to see Bryan Kohberger with gloves. You had the nitrile gloves. Remember you took them? So he was gloved up and bagging up various garbage and evidence and so forth.
And he walked down to his neighbor's house and put the garbage in his neighbor's garbage can.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's go to this poll. I want to see where we're at with it, and then we'll wrap it up. 1,315 votes is the new evidence, we asked, is the new evidence of Bryan against Bryan Kohberger's purchases the final nail in the coffin. Is the ship sinking for the defense? An astounding 81% said yes. This is 1,321 votes. 7% said still not enough. And 12% said we are not sure. So 81% of you say yes, the evidence against Bryan Kohberger is overwhelming and damning. So thank you for, these votes are all jumping up to 1,325. Some people are pulling their votes away and changing them. I didn't know you could do that. But yes, the votes are swelling as we speak. Someone said, please talk about this. I say that, Bill Thompson, Latah County, the district attorney, they are not going to ever offer a plea deal. I can't say ever, But in my opinion, I would bet the house that they will not offer him a plea deal, not just because of the families, but because it's what's right. You do not offer plea deals to quadruple murderers. That is just not what prosecutors do. Okay. So as far as it's my opinion, you're asking me, I say,
oh, hell no.
You knew that was coming, Ed.
Yep.
You knew it was coming. But you're Ed.
Yeah. No way they're going to plea this out.
Yeah.
Not at this stage. And, and there might be a little animosity on the prosecutor's part because all the nonsense that AK threw his way.
Yeah, Ann Taylor. So if you think that there's a plea deal in the future, put a 1 in the chat. If you feel there's not going to be a plea deal in the chat in the future, put a 2. So 1 if you think the prosecutor will offer a plea deal. 1, 2, no. Let's just see quickly, and then we'll wrap it up.
And a plea deal in many cases like this is to avoid the death penalty.
Right. So I think I see a lot of number 2s. I saw a 1 or a couple of 1s. Okie dokie says 1. And no problem. Listen, let's just see who's right. I mean, I don't know. I think oh hell no. Trailblazer ATV says no. Yes, that there will be a plea deal. Cindy Hollenbeck says no. 4 MAGA says no. A lot of no's.
If there's a plea deal, this is only because his defense attorney finally broke through the narcissism of this of BK to get him to go there to save him from the death penalty.
Yeah. And look, it's death by firing squad. And
because I think he wants to go to trial, and I even think he wants to testify.
Oh yeah. I had a little piece that somebody talked about that. There's a lot of people who feel like Bryan Kohberger is Ann Taylor's like he's got his hand up her back like she's a puppet. I don't quite agree with that, but I do think that he is definitely actively involved in his defense. There's no question.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good thing, but I would love to hear him testify. That would be unbelievable to see and hear. But most defense attorneys advise against it, as we know.
Yeah, well, most people that are classic narcissists, their ego typically gets them into this trouble, and they feel that they're smarter than everybody else, and they'll get up on that stand and they'll be able to convince the jury of their innocence. That, and it's sad to see. I've seen it. It's sad to see, and I've had cases where defense attorneys, the defendant actually represented himself at trial. Non-lawyer represented himself at trial, quadruple homicide. It was a death penalty case.
Wow. Interesting. Thank you, Cindy. I want to just go and close the poll out. 1,372 votes. If anybody wants to get in there and vote, I'll hold it open for another 30 seconds. But listen, again, we hold the victims and their families at the forefront. Madison Mogen, 21 at the time of this murder. Kaylee Goncalves, 21. Xana Kernodle, 20. And Ethan Chapin, 20 years young. Their families, we send strength, prayers, and positive vibes to them. We also send all of our positive vibes and strength to the community affected by this and all of the extended friends and families of these victims. We talk about these cases and people, again, they just don't realize the real enormity of what it is. And so Ed and I always try to respect the victims and their families, and we'll say it till the sun comes down, because that's really what these cases are all about. Ed, I know you usually have something to say at the end of these things. We just passed 473,000 subscribers. I just checked.
Okay.
So thank you to all who are subscribing, who are sharing us with your friends. You know, we love and respect you guys because your time is valuable. So we never take you guys for granted, and we appreciate you. We answer a lot of these comments out in the comment section. If you want to continue the conversation, leave us a comment down below in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up, share it out onto your social media platform. Let us know what your thoughts are, because your thoughts matter as well, because we're in this together. Ed, over to you.
All right, folks, thanks for spending your valuable time with us for this hour and a half on the show. Thanks for spreading the word about our YouTube channel, our true crime,
Spit it out, Ed.
blah, 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 blah. Yeah, our true crime channel is growing by leaps and bounds, thanks to you all. As Ron just told you, 473,000 subscribers and climbing. You know, I always tell you at the end of the show, stay safe, stay prepared, and watch your six.
Amen to that, brother. And thank you, Ed, for taking out the time. Ed's been doing a lot of things that we're going to talk about in another show. He's doing a lot of recording for different networks and so forth. He was on Law and Crime. I don't know when that's airing, but we're talking about another case. We'll get into that soon. But on behalf of Crime Time with Dutyron and Ed Wallace, we want to thank you for watching. Thank you to the replay viewers. Thank you for the super chatters. Thank you to the people who buy us cups of coffee and become Patreon supporters, because through your support, it helps us to continue on with this channel. So greatly, greatly appreciate you guys. And we thank you so much for being here. See you guys soon. God bless and good night.